Maya, your contributions to this company have been consistently worthless, Richard Blackwood announced to the packed boardroom, his voice dripping with condescension. Frankly, I should have terminated your employment months ago. The management team shifted uncomfortably while I remained perfectly calm. I reached into my briefcase and withdrew a single document, placing it gently on the mahogany table. Richard, I said quietly, I think you should see this eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate my building. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. He had no idea that the woman he had been tormenting for 2 years was about to become his landlord's worst nightmare. The conference room at Blackwood Marketing Solutions buzzed with the nervous energy that always accompanied Richard's monthly performance reviews. 23 employees crowded around the oversized oval table, notebooks ready, expressions carefully neutral. Everyone understood the unspoken rule. These meetings were less about performance evaluation and more about Richard's monthly power display, where he would systematically tear down anyone who had dared to challenge his authority or outshine his mediocre leadership. I sat in my usual spot near the back corner, close enough to participate when summoned, far enough away to avoid unnecessary attention. After 2 years of working under Richard's toxic management style, I had learned to navigate these sessions with surgical precision. Keep your head down, document everything, and never give him ammunition for his public humiliations. Richard Blackwood commanded attention through sheer physical presence, rather than intellectual authority. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair that suggested distinguished leadership to those who had not yet discovered his complete lack of strategic vision, he possessed the kind of superficial charisma that impressed clients during brief interactions, while devastating employees who endured extended exposure to his management philosophy. At 45, Richard had built Blackwood Marketing Solutions into a moderately successful firm through aggressive client acquisition and ruthless cost-cutting measures that prioritized short-term profits over sustainable growth. His approach to employee management reflected the same philosophy: extract maximum productivity through intimidation, while minimizing investment in professional development or workplace culture. Today's agenda focuses on quarterly performance metrics and strategic realignment for Q4. Richard announced, consulting his tablet with exaggerated importance. However, before we proceed with departmental reviews, I want to address some concerning patterns I've observed regarding work quality and professional commitment. The room tensed collectively. Richard's concerning patterns discussions inevitably targeted specific individuals for public criticism, using their supposed failures as teaching moments for the broader team. These exercises served dual purposes. They reinforced Richard's authority while creating an atmosphere of fear that prevented employees from questioning his decisions or suggesting alternative approaches. Maya Rodriguez. Richard's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Please stand up so everyone can see you. My stomach clenched, but I maintained my composure as I rose from my chair. 2 years of similar humiliations had taught me that showing emotion would only encourage Richard to escalate his attack. I clasped my hands behind my back, lifted my chin slightly, and met his gaze with calm professionalism. Maya has been with our organization for 24 months, Richard continued, his tone suggesting he was discussing a particularly disappointing business investment. During that time, her performance has consistently failed to meet the standards we expect from marketing professionals. The accusation hit like a physical blow, not because it contained truth, but because it represented such a deliberate distortion of reality. Over the past 2 years, I had consistently exceeded every performance metric Richard had established. My client retention rate was 97%, the highest in the company. My campaign conversion rates averaged 38% above industry standards. My project completion record was flawless, with every deadline met and every budget maintained precisely. But Richard's criticism was not about actual performance. It was about control, intimidation, and his pathological need to diminish anyone whose competence threatened his inflated sense of superiority. Maya's project management lacks strategic vision, Richard continued, warming to his theme. Her client communications demonstrate insufficient understanding of market dynamics. Her campaign concepts consistently require extensive revision before meeting our quality standards. Each lie landed with calculated precision. Richard had perfected the art of public humiliation through years of practice, understanding exactly how to deliver criticism that sounded professional while being utterly devastating to the recipient. His accusations were specific enough to sound credible while being vague enough to resist easy contradiction. Sarah Chen, my closest colleague in the marketing department, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I could see her struggling with the urge to defend me, understanding that speaking up would only redirect Richard's attention toward her own performance record. The mathematics of workplace survival under toxic leadership were brutally simple. Protect yourself first, help others when possible, but never sacrifice your own position for someone else's temporary relief. Furthermore, Richard's voice gained momentum as he sensed the room's discomfort. Maya's attitude toward feedback has been consistently defensive and unprofessional. When supervisors offer constructive criticism, she responds with arguments rather than acknowledgement, suggesting a fundamental misunderstanding of hierarchical workplace dynamics. This particular accusation contained enough truth to sting, while completely misrepresenting the context. I had indeed questioned Richard's feedback, but only when his suggestions would have damaged client relationships or violated industry best practices. My defensive responses had been attempts to prevent strategic mistakes that would harm our clients and our company's reputation. But Richard's version of events painted my professional diligence as insubordination, my expertise as arrogance, my commitment to quality as resistance to authority. The narrative was masterfully constructed to justify whatever punishment he was building toward, while making my eventual termination seem like a reasonable business decision rather than personal vindictiveness. Maya's contributions to this company have been consistently worthless, Richard declared, his voice rising to ensure that every person in the room understood the complete extent of his judgment. Frankly, I should have terminated your employment months ago. The only reason you still have a position here is my misplaced belief that everyone deserves opportunities to improve their performance. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. 22 colleagues stared at their notebooks, the table, their hands, anywhere except at me or Richard. The silence stretched for eternal seconds while Richard basked in the power of public destruction, and I processed the magnitude of his professional assassination. But something had shifted inside me during those brutal minutes of character demolition. The fear that had governed my behavior for 2 years had crystallized into something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous to Richard's carefully constructed authority. He had pushed too far, revealed too much of his true character, and created the perfect conditions for his own destruction. I reached into my briefcase with movement so calm and deliberate that the entire room focused on my hands. Richard watched with smug satisfaction, probably expecting resignation papers or an emotional breakdown that would complete his dominance display. Instead, I withdrew a single document printed on official legal letterhead and placed it gently on the mahogany table in front of him. "Richard," I said, my voice carrying a quiet authority that had been building for 2 years of systematic abuse, "I think you should see this eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate my building." The transformation in Richard's expression was instantaneous and complete. Smug confidence collapsed into confusion, then shock, then something approaching panic as he picked up the document with trembling hands. The legal language was crystal clear. Maya Rodriguez, as property owner of 1247 Commerce Boulevard, was terminating the lease agreement with Blackwood Marketing Solutions, effective 30 days from the date of notice. The room erupted in whispers and shuffling papers as 22 minds tried to process what they had just witnessed. The woman Richard had publicly humiliated as worthless had just revealed herself as his landlord, holding the power to destroy his business with a single legal document. "This can't be real," Richard whispered, his voice cracking as he read the eviction notice for the 3rd time. "Maya, you're a marketing associate. You can't possibly own this building." I smiled with the same calm professionalism I had maintained throughout his verbal assault, but now my composure carried an entirely different meaning. Where moments before it had represented powerless endurance, it now revealed strategic patience finally reaching its culmination. "Actually, Richard, I've owned this building for 18 months. I purchased it through Rodriguez Commercial Properties, my real estate investment company, specifically because I knew Blackwood Marketing was struggling with lease negotiations and needed stability. I thought providing you with below-market rent would help the company succeed while generating reasonable returns on my investment. The mathematics of the situation hit Richard like a physical blow. For 18 months, he had been paying rent to the woman he had been systematically abusing, never suspecting that his victim held absolute power over his business location. Every humiliation he had inflicted, every public embarrassment he had engineered, had been witnessed by the person who could destroy his company with 30 days' notice. Sarah Chen's mouth had dropped open in undisguised amazement. Marcus Webb from the creative department was frantically taking notes as if documenting a historic moment. Jennifer Kim from account management was staring at me with an expression that suggested she was completely reevaluating everything she thought she knew about workplace power dynamics. But my revelation was just beginning. The eviction notice was merely the opening move in a game that Richard had been losing since the moment he decided to treat me as disposable. You're probably wondering how a marketing associate making $45,000 annually could afford to purchase a $2.7 million commercial property. I continued, enjoying the way Richard's face grew paler with each word. The answer is that marketing associate has never been my primary career. I've been building Rodriguez commercial properties for 6 years, starting with residential rentals and gradually moving into commercial real estate investment. Richard's world was collapsing in real time as he realized that everything he thought he knew about our professional relationship was fundamentally wrong. I was not the desperate employee clinging to an underpaid position out of economic necessity. I was an entrepreneur using my marketing role as market research, learning about commercial real estate needs while building a portfolio that now included 12 properties across the metropolitan area. Maya, if you own the building, why have you been working here? Sarah asked, her voice filled with genuine confusion. The question reflected what everyone in the room was thinking. Why would someone with significant real estate investments subject themselves to Richard's toxic management style? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Because I needed to understand how commercial tenants actually use their spaces, I replied, maintaining eye contact with Richard while addressing Sarah's question. Working inside various businesses has taught me about tenant needs, space utilization, building maintenance priorities, and lease negotiation strategies. Every day of employment has been research for my real estate business. The admission hit Richard like another physical blow. For 2 years, he had assumed he was exploiting a vulnerable employee who needed his approval and feared his authority. Instead, he had been providing free market research to a competitor who was studying his business operations while building the financial resources to destroy his company. Furthermore, I continued, reaching into my briefcase for additional documents. My research has revealed several concerning issues about how you've been managing this business. Issues that violate our lease agreement and justify immediate termination of your tenancy. Richard's face went white as I placed 3 additional documents on the table: photographs of unauthorized structural modifications he had made to the building, documentation of his failure to maintain required insurance coverage, and records of his subletting portions of the office space without property owner approval. You've been monitoring us? Richard's voice cracked with disbelief and growing panic. I've been protecting my investment, I corrected. As property owner, I have legal obligations to ensure tenant compliance with lease terms, building codes, and insurance requirements. Your unauthorized modifications to the electrical system violate municipal codes and void our insurance coverage. Your subletting arrangement with the consulting firm on the 3rd floor violates our exclusive use agreement. Your failure to maintain required liability coverage exposes me to legal risks that justify immediate lease termination. The room fell silent as everyone processed the complete reversal of power dynamics that had just occurred. Richard, who moments before had been the undisputed authority figure publicly humiliating a subordinate, now faced professional destruction at the hands of his supposed victim. The woman he had called worthless was systematically dismantling his business with legal precision and documented evidence. But I was not finished. The public humiliation Richard had inflicted demanded a response proportional to the offense, and I had been preparing for this moment far longer than he could possibly imagine. Richard, you mentioned that my attitude toward feedback has been unprofessional and defensive, I said, my voice carrying a tone of gentle correction that somehow managed to be more devastating than any shouting could have been. I'd like to address that observation with some feedback of my own. I reached into my briefcase one final time and withdrew a leather portfolio containing 2 years of documentation. Every email exchange, every performance review, every public humiliation, every instance of credit theft, every example of discriminatory treatment. The portfolio was organized with the same meticulous attention to detail that I brought to my real estate investments, creating an irrefutable record of systematic workplace abuse. For 24 months, I have documented every interaction we've had, every decision you've made regarding my employment, every instance where you've taken credit for my work or publicly criticized my performance despite evidence of my success. I announced, opening the portfolio to reveal hundreds of pages of carefully organized evidence. Richard's expression shifted from panic to something approaching terror, as he realized the scope of documentation I had assembled. Every cruel comment, every stolen idea, every public humiliation had been recorded, time-stamped, and cross-referenced with supporting evidence that would destroy his professional reputation if revealed publicly. "Maya, please," Richard whispered, his voice barely audible above the stunned silence of our colleagues. "We can work this out. Whatever issues you have with my management style, we can address them professionally. There's no need to involve legal action or property disputes." His pleading revealed the complete collapse of the authority structure that had governed our relationship for 2 years. The man who had publicly declared me worthless was now begging for mercy from the woman whose power he had never suspected. The reversal was so complete, so sudden, and so thoroughly documented that no one in the room could doubt which of us truly held the strategic advantage. But my response to his pleading would set the tone for everything that followed. This moment would determine whether my revelation became the foundation for genuine workplace reform or merely personal revenge disguised as professional justice. "Richard," I said, closing the portfolio with deliberate precision, "I appreciate your willingness to discuss these issues professionally. However, the time for private conversations ended when you decided to publicly humiliate me in front of our entire team. Just as you made this a public matter, the resolution will also be public." The room held its collective breath as everyone waited to see how far I would push my newly revealed advantage. Richard's face cycled through expressions of fear, calculation, and desperate hope as he tried to find some angle that might preserve his authority and his business location. "I'll be scheduling a meeting with our entire staff for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I announced, standing up from my chair with the same calm authority I had maintained throughout the entire confrontation. "During that meeting, I will be presenting my comprehensive review of workplace conditions, management practices, and recommended improvements for creating a more professional environment." The announcement sent another wave of shock through the room. I was not simply retaliating against Richard's abuse. I was positioning myself to restructure the entire workplace culture that had enabled his toxic behavior to flourish unchallenged. As building owner, I have significant interest in ensuring that my tenants maintain professional standards that protect my property investment and create positive working environments for all employees. I continued, gathering my materials with practiced efficiency. Tomorrow's meeting will address how we can achieve those objectives while maintaining beneficial relationships for everyone involved. Richard sat frozen in his chair, still clutching the eviction notice, while his mind processed the complete destruction of everything he had assumed about our professional relationship. The woman he had tried to break had instead been studying him, building resources, and preparing for this exact moment of reckoning. As I walked toward the conference room door, Sarah Chan caught my attention with a gesture of support that suggested she understood the broader implications of what had just occurred. Her expression conveyed admiration, relief, and anticipation for the changes that tomorrow's meeting might bring. "Oh, and Richard," I said, pausing at the doorway to deliver my final comment of the day. "I'll need you to prepare a comprehensive report on your management philosophy and employee development strategies for tomorrow's discussion. Consider it homework." The door closed behind me with a soft click that somehow managed to sound like the closing of a chapter in Richard's professional career. Behind me, I could hear the immediate explosion of conversation as 22 colleagues tried to process the complete reversal of workplace power dynamics they had just witnessed. Walking to my car in the parking garage, I reflected on the 2 years of preparation that had led to this moment. Every insult Richard had delivered, every public humiliation he had inflicted, every attempt to undermine my confidence, had actually been building toward his own professional destruction. His cruelty had provided the motivation, his predictability had enabled my planning, and his arrogance had blinded him to the growing threat of his supposedly powerless victim. Tomorrow's meeting would determine whether Blackwood Marketing Solutions could evolve into a genuinely professional organization, or whether Richard's lease termination would force him to relocate his toxic management style to a building owned by someone less committed to workplace reform. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, I would go to sleep knowing that the balance of power had shifted permanently in favor of competence, preparation, and strategic patience over bullying, ignorance, and casual cruelty. The woman Richard had called worthless was about to teach him the most expensive lesson of his professional career about the true value of treating employees with respect and dignity. And the education would begin at 9 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning. The drive home from the office took me through the downtown district where my real estate empire had quietly taken root over the past 6 years. At every red light, I could see properties that belonged to Rodriguez Commercial Properties, the converted warehouse that housed 3 tech startups, the renovated office building that accommodated 2 law firms and an accounting practice, the mixed-use development that combined retail space with professional offices for small businesses looking to establish downtown presence. Each property represented thousands of hours of research, negotiation, renovation planning, and strategic positioning in a commercial real estate market that most investors found intimidating. While Richard Blackwood had spent the past 2 years assuming I was a desperate employee grateful for steady employment, I had been building a portfolio that generated more monthly income than his entire marketing firm's quarterly profits. The irony was profound and deliberate. I had chosen to work at Blackwood Marketing Solutions specifically because I knew Richard was struggling with commercial lease negotiations for his growing business. My role as a marketing associate provided perfect cover for studying his operations while offering him below-market rent that would help his company succeed. I had intended our relationship to be mutually beneficial. He would receive affordable office space and reliable tenant stability, while I would gain practical experience managing commercial relationships and understanding tenant needs from the inside. What I had not anticipated was Richard's pathological need to dominate and humiliate anyone he perceived as subordinate. Within weeks of starting my position, I realized that Richard viewed kindness as weakness, competence as threat, and employee success as personal challenge to his authority. My attempt to create a positive professional relationship had instead provided him with a target for systematic psychological abuse. But Richard's cruelty had taught me valuable lessons about power dynamics that no business school could provide. I learned that toxic leaders reveal their true character most clearly when they believe they face no consequences for their actions. I discovered that workplace bullies depend entirely on their victims' emotional reactions to fuel their sense of superiority. Most importantly, I understood that the best defense against systematic abuse was not confrontation, but strategic patience, combined with methodical documentation and resource building. The stakes of my situation had evolved dramatically over the 24 months since joining Blackwood Marketing. What began as a simple market research project had transformed into a comprehensive case study of workplace toxicity, real estate investment strategy, and personal resilience under systematic pressure. Every day Richard spent humiliating me was another day I spent building the financial and legal resources necessary to completely restructure our professional relationship. My apartment reflected the dual nature of my professional existence. The modest 2-bedroom unit in a middle-income neighborhood suggested the lifestyle of someone earning $45,000 annually in marketing coordination. The furniture was practical rather than luxurious. The decorations were minimal, and the overall impression was of someone living within careful budget constraints while building toward future stability. However, the home office revealed the true scope of my activities. 3 monitors displayed real-time market data, property management software, and financial analysis tools that would have impressed any commercial real estate firm. Filing cabinets contained detailed documentation of every property acquisition, renovation project, tenant relationship, and strategic development plan in my portfolio. The walls were covered with neighborhood maps, demographic analysis charts, and commercial development projections that guided my investment decisions. The contrast between my public persona and private reality was intentional and necessary. Working inside Richard's company while building a competing business empire required careful compartmentalization that protected both ventures from unnecessary complications. My colleagues at Blackwood Marketing knew me as a competent but unremarkable marketing professional who handled client communications with reliable efficiency. My real estate contacts knew me as Maya Rodriguez, the increasingly successful commercial property investor whose analytical approach and financial discipline had earned respect throughout the downtown development community. Managing this dual existence required constant vigilance and strategic thinking that had strengthened my capabilities in ways I never expected. Every conversation at Blackwood Marketing was filtered through my understanding of commercial real estate dynamics. Every client interaction provided insights about small business space utilization needs. Every observation of Richard's management failures became data about tenant behavior patterns that informed my property management strategies. The psychological pressure of maintaining two professional identities while enduring Richard's systematic abuse had pushed me to develop resilience and strategic patience that transformed challenge into competitive advantage. Where other employees responded to Richard's bullying with either submission or confrontation, I responded with documentation and resource building. Every insult he delivered became motivation for expanding my property portfolio. Every public humiliation he inflicted became evidence for the comprehensive case I was building against his management practices. The financial stakes of my situation were substantial and growing. Rodriguez Commercial Properties now generated sufficient monthly income to support my lifestyle without any employment income from Blackwood Marketing. My real estate investments had appreciated significantly as downtown development accelerated, creating paper wealth that exceeded my original projections by considerable margins. The business had evolved from side project to primary career, with growth potential that dwarfed anything possible within traditional employment structures. But the personal stakes were equally significant. 2 years of systematic workplace abuse had tested my psychological resilience in ways that revealed both strengths and vulnerabilities I had never recognized. Richard's constant criticism and public humiliation had forced me to develop unshakable confidence in my own competence while learning to separate professional performance from personal worth. His attempts to undermine my authority had taught me to document everything while building support networks that could verify my contributions when necessary. The experience had also clarified my understanding of workplace justice and professional ethics. Richard's behavior represented everything toxic about hierarchical business culture: the assumption that position determines worth, the belief that authority justifies cruelty, and the practice of extracting value from employees while providing minimal recognition or development opportunities. My response to his abuse would either perpetuate these dynamics through revenge or challenge them through systematic reform that protected other vulnerable employees. The stakes extended beyond personal vindication to encompass broader questions about workplace culture and professional accountability. Every employee at Blackwood Marketing had witnessed Richard's systematic abuse of authority, while feeling powerless to intervene without risking their own positions. The fear and resignation that characterized our office environment reflected the psychological damage that toxic leadership inflicts on entire organizations, reducing productivity while increasing turnover and undermining employee well-being. My revelation about property ownership had fundamentally altered the power balance within our workplace, but the ultimate outcome depended on how I chose to utilize this advantage. I could destroy Richard's business immediately through lease termination and public exposure of his abusive behavior. I could demand his immediate resignation while taking control of the company's strategic direction. I could negotiate private settlements that protected my interests while allowing him to maintain public dignity. Or I could attempt genuine workplace reform that addressed systemic problems while offering redemption opportunities for those willing to change. The choice I made would determine whether my story became an example of successful revenge or successful leadership. It would establish whether my 2 years of strategic patience had built resources for destruction or reconstruction. Most importantly, it would reveal whether the competence and integrity I had demonstrated under pressure could translate into positive change that benefited everyone involved. The evening after my confrontation with Richard, I sat in my home office reviewing the comprehensive documentation I had assembled over 24 months of systematic observation. The files contained detailed records of every aspect of Blackwood Marketing's operations, employee satisfaction surveys I had conducted informally, client feedback I had gathered through my daily interactions, financial performance data I had observed through my access to project budgets and billing records, and management practice analysis based on hundreds of hours of observation and documentation. The picture that emerged from this research was both worse and better than I had initially understood. Richard's toxic leadership had indeed created a hostile work environment that reduced productivity, increased employee turnover, and damaged client relationships through unprofessional communication and strategic failures. However, the company also contained exceptional talent and strong client relationships that could flourish under competent leadership and supportive workplace culture. Sarah Chen possessed innovative campaign development capabilities that Richard consistently dismissed or claimed as his own ideas. Marcus Webb demonstrated creative problem-solving skills that could revolutionize our approach to client engagement, if properly supported and encouraged. Jennifer Kim maintained client relationships with diplomatic skill that prevented Richard's abrasive personality from destroying lucrative contracts. David Park handled financial analysis with mathematical precision that could guide strategic planning if his insights were valued rather than ignored. The human resources potential within Blackwood Marketing was extraordinary, but it was being systematically wasted through management practices that prioritized ego over effectiveness. Richard's need to dominate every interaction prevented him from recognizing or developing the capabilities of his team members. His insecurity about his own competence led him to suppress anyone whose skills threatened his perceived authority. His focus on short-term control undermined long-term business development that required collaborative planning and sustained commitment. My research revealed that Blackwood Marketing could become a genuinely exceptional firm under different leadership, or it could continue declining under Richard's toxic influence until client losses and employee departures forced closure or acquisition. The outcome depended entirely on whether the workplace culture could be reformed or whether systemic change required complete leadership replacement. The stakes of tomorrow's meeting encompassed more than personal vindication or professional revenge. 22 colleagues were depending on my decisions to determine their future working conditions, career development opportunities, and daily psychological well-being. Dozens of clients were relying on our company's stability and professionalism to support their own business objectives. The broader community was impacted by whether our workplace contributed to positive economic development or perpetuated toxic business practices that damaged professional standards throughout the region. The responsibility was overwhelming and energizing simultaneously. For 2 years, I had felt powerless to influence the workplace culture that was damaging my colleagues and limiting our collective potential. Now I possessed the authority and resources necessary to demand comprehensive changes, while having the leverage to ensure those changes were implemented effectively, rather than superficially. But wielding this power required wisdom and strategic thinking that balanced justice with mercy, accountability with redemption, and systemic reform with individual respect. The approach I chose would establish precedents for how workplace conflicts should be resolved, and how professional authority should be exercised. It would demonstrate whether intelligent preparation and strategic patience could create positive change that benefited everyone involved, or whether power dynamics inevitably produced winners and losers without possibility for mutual benefit. My phone rang at 9:30 that evening, interrupting my strategic planning with the distinctive tone I had assigned to property management emergencies. The caller identification showed David Park's number, which surprised me given his typically reserved personality and professional boundaries. "Maya, I hope you don't mind me calling so late?" David's voice carried obvious nervousness mixed with curiosity. "I wanted to ask you about what happened in the meeting today. Is it really true that you own our building?" The question revealed the psychological impact that my revelation had created throughout the office. Within hours, the news had spread to every employee, generating conversations and speculation that would continue until tomorrow's scheduled meeting provided official clarification and direction. "Yes, David, it's true," I confirmed, appreciating his direct approach to addressing the situation. I've owned the building for 18 months through Rodriguez Commercial Properties. I purchased it specifically to provide Blackwood Marketing with stable, affordable office space while learning about commercial real estate management from the tenant perspective. That's incredible, David replied, his voice filled with genuine admiration. I had no idea you were involved in real estate investment. Your financial analysis skills at work make much more sense now. You've been thinking like a business owner because you actually are one. His observation highlighted an important dynamic that had been developing throughout my employment at Blackwood Marketing. Several colleagues had noticed discrepancies between my apparent position and my demonstrated capabilities, but they had attributed these differences to overqualification or career transition rather than parallel business development. My strategic thinking, attention to financial details, and comprehensive approach to problem solving had reflected my real estate investor mindset rather than typical employee behavior. David, can I ask you a question about tomorrow's meeting? I said, recognizing an opportunity to gather intelligence about employee expectations and concerns. What are people hoping will happen? What changes do they want to see? The question unleashed a flood of suppressed frustration and genuine hope that David had apparently been storing for months. His response revealed the extent to which Richard's toxic leadership had impacted every aspect of workplace culture, while demonstrating the potential for positive transformation if systematic changes were implemented effectively. Maya, people are scared but excited, David explained. Everyone has been hoping someone would finally stand up to Richard's bullying, but we never imagined it would happen like this. The fact that you have real power to change things, not just moral authority but actual legal and financial control, has given people hope that things might actually improve, rather than just getting worse until everyone quits or gets fired. His words captured the psychological dynamic that my revelation had created throughout the office. For 2 years, employees had felt trapped between accepting abuse and risking unemployment through confrontation or resignation. My demonstration of hidden power had opened possibilities for systemic change that seemed impossible under normal workplace hierarchies. What specific changes do people want to see? I pressed, recognizing that tomorrow's meeting would be more effective if it addressed concrete concerns rather than general workplace dissatisfaction. Respect, David answered immediately. People want to be treated like professionals rather than children. They want their ideas heard and their contributions recognized. They want performance evaluations based on actual work quality, rather than Richard's personal preferences. They want opportunities to develop their skills and advance their careers based on competence rather than politics. His list reflected fundamental management principles that Richard had systematically violated through his ego-driven leadership style. The changes David described were not revolutionary demands but basic professional standards that any competent manager should provide automatically. The fact that these expectations seemed ambitious rather than minimal revealed the extent of damage that toxic leadership had inflicted on workplace culture. David, I want you to know that tomorrow's meeting will address all of those concerns. I assured him. But change requires participation from everyone, not just new policies from management. Are people ready to take responsibility for creating the kind of workplace culture they want? Or are they expecting someone else to fix everything for them? Quote, the question was intentionally challenging because sustainable workplace reform required active engagement from all participants rather than passive dependence on benevolent leadership. My experience as a real estate investor had taught me that successful organizational change demanded buy-in and commitment from every stakeholder, not just compliance with new rules imposed from above. People are ready, David replied with conviction that surprised me. Richard's behavior has been so bad for so long that everyone is desperate for the chance to work in a normal, professional environment. The talent level in this company is much higher than our current performance suggests because people have been afraid to show what they're capable of. His assessment aligned with my own research findings. Blackwood Marketing employed genuinely skilled professionals whose capabilities had been systematically suppressed through management practices that punished excellence and rewarded mediocrity. The company's underperformance reflected leadership failure rather than employee incompetence. After ending the call with David, I spent several additional hours refining my strategy for tomorrow's meeting. The discussion needed to balance accountability for past failures with opportunities for future improvement. It required clear consequences for unacceptable behavior, while providing pathways for redemption and professional development. Most importantly, it demanded genuine commitment to systemic change rather than cosmetic adjustments that preserved existing power structures while appearing to address employee concerns. The stakes of tomorrow's meeting extended far beyond the immediate workplace dynamics at Blackwood Marketing. The outcome would establish whether intelligent preparation and strategic patience could create positive change that benefited all stakeholders, or whether workplace conflicts inevitably produced destructive outcomes that damaged everyone involved. It would demonstrate whether real leadership meant dominating others or empowering them to achieve their highest potential. The choice I made would define not only my professional legacy but my personal character. 2 years of systematic abuse had provided extensive opportunities to develop bitterness, cynicism, and desire for revenge. Instead, I had chosen to build resources, document evidence, and prepare for comprehensive reform that could transform individual suffering into collective benefit. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I would discover whether my approach had created the foundation for genuine workplace transformation or merely postponed inevitable conflict. The woman Richard had called worthless would reveal whether true worth was measured by the ability to destroy others or the wisdom to lift everyone toward their highest potential. 26 months earlier, I had walked through the glass doors of Blackwood Marketing Solutions with genuine optimism and professional excitement that seemed almost naive in retrospect. Fresh from completing my MBA with dual concentrations in marketing strategy and real estate development, I possessed theoretical knowledge that I was eager to translate into practical experience within a growing company that promised opportunities for career advancement and creative problem-solving. Rodriguez Commercial Properties existed only as a carefully researched business plan at that time, supported by modest savings and a comprehensive market analysis that identified downtown revitalization as an emerging investment opportunity. My strategy involved gaining employment with a marketing firm that served small businesses while simultaneously learning about commercial real estate needs from the tenant perspective. The dual approach would provide steady income during the initial phases of property acquisition, while building expertise about client needs that would inform my investment decisions. Blackwood Marketing Solutions appeared to offer the perfect environment for implementing this strategy. The company was experiencing steady growth, serving a diverse client base of small to medium-sized businesses that were expanding their marketing presence as the local economy recovered from previous recession impacts. Richard Blackwood presented himself during the interview process as an experienced leader who valued employee input and supported professional development initiatives that would benefit both individual careers and company performance. The interview had proceeded with encouraging professionalism that suggested a collaborative workplace culture focused on client success and employee growth. Richard discussed strategic planning with apparent enthusiasm, outlined advancement opportunities within the expanding organization, and emphasized his commitment to recognizing outstanding performance through both compensation increases and expanded responsibilities. His questions demonstrated familiarity with current marketing trends and appreciation for candidates who brought analytical skills and creative problem-solving capabilities to client challenges. My initial impression of Richard was formed by these carefully managed interactions that concealed the psychological dynamics that would later dominate our professional relationship. During structured interviews and formal interactions, Richard maintained professional demeanor and articulated reasonable management philosophies that attracted competent employees seeking growth opportunities within supportive organizational cultures. His ability to present himself favorably during limited encounters explained how he consistently recruited talented professionals despite his inability to retain them long-term. The offer Richard extended exceeded my salary expectations and included benefits that supported both my immediate financial needs and long-term career objectives. The position combined client communication responsibilities with strategic planning participation and project management opportunities that would provide comprehensive experience across multiple marketing disciplines. The role appeared designed to utilize my analytical capabilities while developing practical skills that would enhance my value within the industry. Most importantly, for my real estate investment strategy, the position provided perfect cover for studying commercial property needs from the tenant perspective. Working inside a growing marketing firm would teach me about space utilization, technology requirements, client meeting facilitation, and operational logistics that informed property management decisions. The knowledge I gained through daily employment would translate directly into competitive advantages when negotiating leases, planning renovations, and marketing properties to potential tenants. My first 3 months at Blackwood Marketing confirmed my positive initial impressions while revealing Richard's management style under normal operating conditions. He demonstrated strong client relationship skills that generated consistent business development, maintained industry connections that provided strategic opportunities, and possessed sufficient technical knowledge to guide campaign development for most client requirements. His leadership during this period was demanding but fair, focused on results but supportive of employee learning curves. The workplace culture during this initial phase encouraged collaboration, recognized individual contributions, and maintained professional standards that reflected positively on the entire organization. Colleagues approached projects with enthusiasm rather than fear, shared ideas freely during brainstorming sessions, and supported each other through challenging client requirements that demanded creative solutions and accelerated timelines. The environment felt conducive to both personal growth and collective success. My performance during these early months established credibility that would prove crucial during the subsequent period of deteriorating relationships. I consistently exceeded client expectations through thorough research, creative campaign development, and attentive follow-up that strengthened long-term relationships. My analytical approach to project management resulted in campaigns that delivered measurable results while maintaining budget discipline and timeline adherence. Clients began requesting my specific involvement in their projects, indicating satisfaction levels that translated into contract renewals and referral opportunities. Richard's initial response to my strong performance was appropriately positive and professionally encouraging. He provided public recognition during team meetings, included detailed praise in my quarterly reviews, and discussed advancement opportunities that would utilize my capabilities more extensively while providing increased compensation and responsibility. His feedback suggested genuine appreciation for competence and commitment to developing employee potential through challenging assignments and skill-building opportunities. However, subtle changes in Richard's behavior began emerging around month 4, initially so gradual that I attributed them to seasonal business pressures or temporary stress factors, rather than fundamental shifts in his management approach. His feedback became more critical despite consistent performance quality, his recognition of my contributions became less frequent during team discussions, and his communication style shifted toward formality that suggested professional distance rather than collaborative partnership. The transformation accelerated significantly following my successful resolution of a crisis situation that demonstrated strategic thinking and client relationship management capabilities that exceeded Richard's expectations. The Morrison Group, one of our most valuable clients, had become dissatisfied with their campaign results and was threatening contract termination unless immediate improvements were implemented. The situation required comprehensive analysis of their target market, competitive positioning, and communication strategy to identify solutions that would restore confidence while delivering measurable performance improvements. I had requested permission to conduct detailed research into Morrison Group's market position and customer feedback patterns, proposing a comprehensive strategy revision that addressed their specific concerns while positioning them more effectively against emerging competitors. Richard had initially dismissed my proposal as overly complex and potentially disruptive to existing client relationships. However, the escalating severity of Morrison Group's dissatisfaction forced him to authorize my recommended approach as a final attempt to preserve the relationship. The strategy I developed incorporated demographic analysis, competitive intelligence, and consumer psychology principles to create campaigns that resonated more effectively with Morrison Group's target audience, while differentiating their services from increasingly aggressive competitors. The implementation required coordination across multiple marketing channels and careful message consistency that demanded attention to detail and strategic thinking throughout the execution phase. The results exceeded all expectations and established benchmarks that influenced our approach to subsequent client challenges. Morrison Group's engagement metrics improved by 47% within 6 weeks. Their lead generation increased by 62% over 3 months, and their customer conversion rates reached levels that prompted them to expand their marketing budget and extend their contract for 2 additional years. The success generated referrals that brought 3 new clients to Blackwood Marketing and established reputation advantages that differentiated us from competitors. Richard's response to this success marked the definitive turning point in our professional relationship. Rather than celebrating the achievement or recognizing my strategic contribution, he began systematically minimizing my role in the project, while claiming credit for the innovative approaches that had generated the exceptional results. During client meetings, he described the strategy as his own initiative, while referring to my involvement as implementation support that had followed his detailed guidance. The credit theft was methodical and comprehensive, extending beyond public presentations to include written communications, proposal documents, and strategic planning discussions that established Richard as the creative force behind our most successful campaign. My contributions were reframed as administrative support or routine execution of his visionary leadership, reducing my professional identity from strategic thinker to competent assistant whose value lay in following instructions rather than generating solutions. This pattern intensified over subsequent months, as additional project successes provided more opportunities for Richard to demonstrate his appropriation techniques. Each achievement I generated became another example of his exceptional leadership and innovative thinking. My analytical capabilities were recharacterized as attention to detail that supported his strategic vision. My client relationship skills were redefined as effective communication of his marketing concepts to audiences who appreciated clear explanation of sophisticated approaches. The psychological impact of systematic credit theft was more devastating than I initially recognized. Professional identity depends significantly on recognition of individual contributions and validation of personal capabilities through acknowledgement of specific achievements. When those achievements are consistently attributed to others, the resulting erosion of professional self-confidence creates vulnerability that toxic leaders exploit to maintain dominance over talented subordinates. Richard's behavior during this period revealed calculated understanding of psychological manipulation that went far beyond typical workplace competition. He systematically undermined my confidence through public criticism that followed private praise, creating confusion about my actual performance quality while establishing his authority as the definitive judge of professional competence. His feedback became increasingly contradictory and unpredictable, making it impossible to anticipate his responses or adjust my performance to meet his stated expectations. The turning point came during my 8-month performance review, when Richard delivered criticism that contradicted objective evidence of my contributions, while establishing expectations that seemed designed to justify predetermined negative conclusions. He characterized my strongest accomplishments as evidence of problematic independence that demonstrated insufficient respect for hierarchical authority. My most successful client relationships were described as concerning departures from established communication protocols that required closer supervision and correction. Most damaging was his assertion that my strategic thinking capabilities were creating disruption within the team dynamic because other employees were beginning to defer to my judgment rather than seeking his guidance for complex decisions. This criticism revealed his fundamental insecurity about competent subordinates and his belief that employee success represented threats to his authority rather than assets to be developed and celebrated. The review concluded with performance improvement requirements that were specifically designed to be impossible to fulfill while appearing reasonable to external observers. Richard demanded that I reduce my direct client interactions while maintaining current satisfaction levels, limit my strategic input while taking responsibility for campaign outcomes, and defer all significant decisions to his approval while meeting deadlines that required immediate action when he was unavailable for consultation. These contradictory requirements created a double-bind situation where success became definitively impossible, regardless of effort level or skill application. Any attempt to meet one requirement necessarily violated others, providing Richard with documented justification for progressive disciplinary action that would culminate in termination for cause. The strategy was sophisticated enough to protect the company from wrongful termination liability, while systematically destroying my professional reputation and career prospects. However, Richard's calculated cruelty had an unintended consequence that would ultimately lead to his own professional destruction. The obviousness of his manipulation tactics and the contrast between his criticism and objective performance evidence clarified the toxic nature of our workplace culture, while motivating me to develop comprehensive documentation practices that would protect me legally while building evidence of systematic misconduct. More importantly, the experience crystallized my understanding of the power dynamics that governed our professional relationship and revealed the necessity of developing alternative sources of income and authority that would free me from dependence on Richard's approval for my economic security and professional identity. His abuse became the catalyst for accelerating my real estate investment activities from theoretical planning to aggressive implementation. During month 9, I initiated my first commercial property acquisition using savings accumulated through careful budget discipline and side consulting work that provided additional income streams beyond my Blackwood marketing salary. The property was a small office building in the emerging downtown district that required significant renovation, but offered excellent long-term appreciation potential given anticipated development patterns and demographic shifts favoring urban density. The renovation project provided practical education about commercial real estate management, while generating my first rental income from small business tenants who appreciated affordable space in a revitalizing neighborhood. More importantly, the experience demonstrated that real estate investment could provide both financial independence and strategic leverage that traditional employment relationships could never offer. Richard remained completely unaware of my parallel business development activities because his self-absorption prevented him from recognizing employee capabilities or interests beyond their immediate utility for his professional advancement. His assumption that I was completely dependent on employment income for financial survival became a strategic blind spot that allowed me to build resources and develop expertise without interference or competitive response. Over the subsequent 18 months, I expanded my real estate portfolio through careful market analysis and strategic property selection that prioritized cash flow generation and long-term appreciation potential. Each acquisition provided additional rental income that reduced my dependence on employment compensation, while building experience with tenant relationships, property management, and commercial real estate financing that informed subsequent investment decisions. The growing success of Rodriguez commercial properties created an interesting psychological dynamic during the worst period of Richard's abuse. While he was systematically destroying my workplace identity and professional confidence, I was simultaneously building genuine business success that provided objective validation of my strategic thinking and analytical capabilities. The contrast between his fictional narrative of my incompetence and my actual achievements in commercial real estate created resilience that enabled me to endure his psychological manipulation without internalizing his negative assessments. By month 18, Rodriguez Commercial Properties was generating sufficient monthly income to support my lifestyle without employment compensation, transforming my position at Blackwood Marketing from economic necessity to strategic choice. This financial independence fundamentally altered the power dynamic in my relationship with Richard, even though he remained unaware of the change in my circumstances. The acquisition of 1247 Commerce Boulevard represented the culmination of my strategic planning and the beginning of the final phase of my preparation for confronting Richard's toxic leadership. The building that housed Blackwood Marketing Solutions became available through a motivated seller who needed rapid closing to facilitate relocation to another state. The below-market price reflected the urgency of the transaction rather than any fundamental problems with the property or its income-generating potential. Purchasing Richard's building provided multiple strategic advantages that went beyond simple real estate investment returns. As landlord, I gained legal authority to monitor tenant compliance with lease terms, building codes, and insurance requirements that had been systematically violated through Richard's negligent property management. I acquired access to detailed information about Blackwood Marketing's financial stability, operational practices, and long-term viability that informed my assessment of the company's future prospects. Most importantly, building ownership provided ultimate leverage over Richard's business operations while maintaining complete secrecy about the power shift that had occurred in our professional relationship. For 6 months, Richard continued his pattern of systematic abuse while unknowingly paying rent to his primary victim and violating lease agreements that could justify immediate termination of his tenancy. The irony was perfect and deeply satisfying. Every insult Richard delivered was being documented by his landlord. Every public humiliation he inflicted was witnessed by the person who controlled his business location. Every demonstration of his incompetence and cruelty was being recorded by someone with both legal authority and financial resources to demand accountability for his misconduct. The historical development of our professional relationship had created ideal conditions for the confrontation that would determine whether systematic workplace abuse could be transformed into opportunities for positive change and personal growth, or whether toxic leadership patterns inevitably produced destructive outcomes that damaged everyone involved. The shift from enduring Richard's abuse to systematically documenting his misconduct began during my 14th month at Blackwood Marketing Solutions, triggered by an incident that revealed the calculated nature of his psychological manipulation rather than random workplace stress or management inexperience. The Morrison Group presentation had concluded successfully, generating exceptional client satisfaction and significant contract expansion. Yet Richard's post-meeting debriefing focused exclusively on minor presentation details he claimed demonstrated my lack of strategic sophistication. Standing in his office while he delivered criticism that contradicted objective evidence of campaign success, I experienced a moment of clarity that transformed my understanding of our professional relationship. Richard was not attempting to improve my performance through constructive feedback. He was deliberately undermining my confidence to maintain psychological control over someone whose competence threatened his authority. The recognition fundamentally altered my approach, from reactive defense to proactive documentation. That evening, I established a comprehensive record-keeping system designed to capture objective evidence of workplace interactions, performance outcomes, and management decisions that revealed patterns of discriminatory treatment and professional misconduct. The documentation process required discipline and emotional detachment that transformed daily workplace experiences from personal attacks into research data for building an irrefutable case against systematic abuse. The initial documentation focused on performance review discrepancies that demonstrated Richard's selective application of evaluation criteria depending on his personal preferences rather than consistent professional standards. My quarterly reviews contained contradictory assessments that praised specific achievements while simultaneously criticizing the methods that had produced those successful outcomes. When I exceeded client expectations through strategic analysis and creative problem-solving, Richard characterized these approaches as evidence of insufficient teamwork and failure to follow established protocols. The documentation revealed that Richard applied different standards to different employees based on his perception of their threat level to his authority rather than their actual job performance or professional conduct. Employees who consistently agreed with his decisions and avoided independent initiative received positive reviews regardless of their objective contributions to client outcomes or company performance. Colleagues who demonstrated strategic thinking or generated innovative solutions faced criticism that discouraged further displays of competence. Sarah Chen provided an excellent case study for understanding Richard's discriminatory patterns. Her creative campaign concepts consistently generated superior client engagement metrics and measurable business development outcomes that exceeded industry benchmarks. However, her performance reviews criticized her approaches as unnecessarily complex and potentially confusing to clients who preferred straightforward communication strategies. Richard's feedback discouraged Sarah from proposing innovative solutions while simultaneously holding her accountable for campaign performance that required exactly the kind of creative thinking he was actively suppressing. Marcus Webb faced similar contradictory expectations that revealed Richard's systematic approach to undermining employee confidence and professional development. Marcus possessed exceptional analytical capabilities that identified market opportunities and competitive advantages for clients seeking to expand their business presence. His research and strategic recommendations consistently proved accurate and profitable when implemented fully. Nevertheless, Richard characterized Marcus's thoroughness as evidence of inefficiency and inability to prioritize essential information over unnecessary detail. The pattern extended beyond performance evaluations to encompass project assignment decisions that revealed Richard's deliberate effort to prevent talented employees from demonstrating their full capabilities. High-visibility projects with significant client impact were assigned to less competent employees, whose limitations ensured Richard remained the primary strategic contributor to successful outcomes. Complex challenges requiring advanced analytical skills were distributed among multiple team members to prevent any individual from receiving credit for comprehensive problem-solving. Jennifer Kim experienced this project assignment manipulation through her expertise in client relationship management and strategic communication. Her diplomatic skills and cultural sensitivity had rescued numerous client relationships that were damaged by Richard's abrasive communication style and tendency to make commitments without consulting operational constraints. Despite her demonstrated effectiveness in crisis resolution and long-term relationship building, Jennifer was excluded from initial client meetings where strategic decisions were established. limiting her involvement to damage control rather than proactive relationship development. The documentation process revealed that Richard's management approach followed predictable cycles that corresponded to his psychological need for dominance validation rather than business performance requirements. During periods when external pressure was minimal and company performance met basic expectations, Richard focused on maintaining control through routine criticism and credit appropriation that kept employees psychologically dependent on his approval. When external challenges or performance pressures increased, he escalated his abuse to ensure that employee anxiety prevented them from recognizing his strategic failures or questioning his decision-making authority. Quarterly board reviews triggered particularly intense periods of employee targeting because Richard needed to present evidence of strong leadership and effective team management to justify his compensation and authority. Rather than highlighting genuine team achievements that would reflect positively on his leadership capabilities, Richard manufactured crises and employee performance problems that positioned him as the essential problem solver who maintained company stability through decisive intervention and course correction. The manufactured crisis pattern became clear through careful observation of Richard's behavior during board meeting preparation periods. 3 weeks before scheduled board presentations, he would begin identifying employee performance issues that had not previously been documented or discussed through normal feedback channels. Minor procedural variations became evidence of systemic problems requiring immediate management attention. Successful projects were reframed as successful crisis management rather than evidence of effective planning and execution. David Park experienced this manufactured crisis approach when Richard decided to use financial reporting procedures as evidence of departmental inefficiency requiring enhanced management oversight. David's accounting methods exceeded industry standards for accuracy and compliance, while providing detailed analysis that supported strategic planning and performance optimization. However, Richard characterized David's thoroughness as evidence of bureaucratic thinking that slowed business development and created unnecessary administrative burden. The board presentation crisis escalated when Richard claimed that David's financial reporting timeline was preventing timely decision-making and constraining company responsiveness to market opportunities. The accusation ignored the fact that Richard consistently requested financial analysis with insufficient lead time and frequently changed strategic priorities without providing adequate notice for budget adjustments. David's careful adherence to accounting standards and analytical precision became evidence of inflexibility rather than professional competence. My documentation captured the complete cycle of crisis manufacture, employee targeting, and problem resolution that allowed Richard to present himself as effective leadership while systematically undermining the employee performance that actually sustained company operations. The pattern was sophisticated enough to deflect casual observation while creating significant psychological stress and professional insecurity among employees who recognized the unfairness but lacked resources to address the systematic nature of the abuse. The recognition of these patterns provided crucial insight into the psychological mechanisms that enabled Richard's continued authority, despite his consistent undermining of employee morale and operational effectiveness. His success depended on maintaining employee isolation and preventing collective recognition of his discriminatory treatment patterns. Individual employees who experienced his abuse assumed their treatment reflected personal failings rather than systematic management dysfunction, because they lacked access to information about how their colleagues were being treated. The documentation process required developing systematic methods for recording verbal interactions, preserving electronic communications, and maintaining objective performance metrics that could counteract Richard's distorted narratives about employee contributions and workplace dynamics. Digital voice recording became essential for capturing the tone and specific language Richard used during private conversations that differed significantly from his professional demeanor during group meetings or formal interactions. State recording laws permitted single-party consent documentation, allowing me to preserve evidence of Richard's discriminatory comments and psychological manipulation tactics without legal complications. The recordings revealed stark contrasts between Richard's public praise of team collaboration and private criticism of employee independence that threatened his control over strategic decision-making processes. The recorded conversations provided compelling evidence of Richard's intentional misconduct rather than management inexperience or workplace stress responses. His private comments demonstrated clear understanding of employee strengths and contributions that he deliberately minimized during public discussions and formal performance evaluations. He expressed explicit concern about employees who generated innovative solutions or developed strong client relationships independently of his direct supervision and guidance. One particularly revealing recording captured Richard discussing his strategy for managing talented employees who might challenge his authority or demonstrate superior capabilities in specific areas. He described his approach as preemptive performance management that identified potential problems before they could impact team dynamics or client relationships. The language revealed his understanding that employee competence represented a threat to be managed rather than an asset to be developed. Electronic communication documentation provided additional evidence of Richard's systematic manipulation through selective information sharing, credit appropriation, and strategic exclusion from decision-making processes that affected employee job performance and professional development. Email threads revealed patterns of communication that excluded key personnel from strategic planning discussions, while holding them accountable for implementation outcomes that required information they had been deliberately prevented from accessing. The client communication analysis became particularly significant when it revealed Richard's practice of taking credit for employee innovations while simultaneously undermining those employees through private communications that suggested their contributions were minimal or problematic. Client emails showed consistent patterns where Richard presented employee ideas as his own strategic thinking, while describing the actual contributors as implementation support whose value lay in following detailed guidance rather than generating creative solutions. Project outcome documentation provided objective performance metrics that contradicted Richard's narrative about employee competence and contribution levels. Campaign success rates, client satisfaction scores, timeline adherence, and budget management statistics demonstrated consistent excellence from employees who were simultaneously receiving poor performance reviews and limited advancement opportunities. The contrast between objective outcomes and subjective evaluations revealed systematic bias that served Richard's psychological needs rather than legitimate business assessment. Financial analysis of project profitability provided particularly compelling evidence because it demonstrated the measurable business impact of Richard's discriminatory management practices. Projects led by targeted employees generated superior returns despite receiving reduced resource allocation and strategic support. The success occurred because of employee competence rather than management effectiveness, indicating that company performance could improve significantly under different leadership approaches. The most significant pattern that emerged from comprehensive documentation was Richard's consistent underestimation of employee capabilities and systematic prevention of professional development that would enhance their market value and career mobility. His management approach was designed to create economic dependence and professional insecurity that prevented employees from seeking alternative employment or challenging his authority through collective action or external accountability mechanisms. This pattern explained the low employee retention rates and difficulty attracting experienced professionals that had begun affecting company performance despite strong client relationships and market position. Richard's reputation within the industry was gradually becoming known among marketing professionals who recognized that employment at Blackwood Marketing Solutions involved accepting systematic abuse rather than receiving professional development and career advancement opportunities. The documentation process had evolved into a comprehensive analysis of workplace toxicity that revealed how individual psychological manipulations scaled into organizational dysfunction that damaged employee well-being, client relationships, and long-term business sustainability. Richard's leadership approach was systematically destroying the human resources and professional relationships that represented the company's most valuable assets, while creating legal liability through discriminatory practices that violated employment standards and professional ethics. Understanding these patterns provided the foundation for developing comprehensive solutions that addressed both individual accountability for misconduct and systemic reforms that would prevent future abuse while supporting employee development and business growth. The evidence revealed that organizational change was possible, but required fundamental shifts in leadership philosophy and management practices that prioritized employee empowerment over authoritarian control. The documentation had transformed my daily workplace experience from emotional endurance to strategic intelligence gathering that built the comprehensive case necessary for demanding accountability and implementing positive change. Every interaction with Richard became an opportunity to gather additional evidence, while every conversation with colleagues revealed new aspects of the systematic dysfunction that required attention and correction. After 18 months of careful documentation, I possessed irrefutable evidence that Richard's management approach violated professional standards, created hostile working conditions, and generated measurable business harm through employee demoralization and strategic incompetence. The case was comprehensive enough to support both internal organizational changes and external accountability measures that would protect current employees while preventing similar abuse in future workplace situations. The moment that crystallized my understanding of the fundamental impossibility of reforming Richard's behavior through traditional workplace channels occurred during the Henderson Group crisis in month 21. The situation began as a routine client satisfaction inquiry that escalated into a comprehensive audit of our campaign effectiveness, when Henderson Group's executives expressed concerns about declining engagement metrics and questioned the strategic direction we had been implementing over the previous 6 months. The Henderson Group represented our second-largest client relationship, generating nearly 30% of annual revenue while serving as a reference account that influenced prospects throughout our target market. Their satisfaction directly impacted both immediate financial performance and long-term business development opportunities. The crisis required immediate strategic analysis, comprehensive campaign revision, and diplomatic relationship management that would demonstrate our commitment to client success, while addressing their specific concerns about return on investment and market positioning. Richard's initial response to Henderson Group's concerns revealed the complete extent of his strategic incompetence and his reliance on employee expertise that he consistently undermined through his management approach. Rather than conducting thorough analysis of campaign performance data or consulting with team members who maintained direct client relationships, he scheduled a presentation meeting where he intended to defend our existing approach through arguments that ignored client feedback and objective performance metrics. The proposed strategy would have been professionally catastrophic. Richard planned to argue that Henderson Group's declining engagement reflected market conditions rather than campaign ineffectiveness, suggesting that their expectations were unrealistic given industry trends and competitive pressures. He intended to present data that supported his narrative while omitting information that contradicted his conclusions, creating a presentation that would have destroyed our credibility and guaranteed contract termination. I recognized that allowing Richard to proceed with this approach would damage not only our relationship with Henderson Group, but our reputation throughout the business community. The presentation would demonstrate strategic thinking so fundamentally flawed that other clients would question our competence, and potential clients would eliminate us from consideration for future projects. The crisis represented a threshold moment where Richard's incompetence threatened to destroy relationships and reputation that extended far beyond his individual authority. My attempts to address the situation through normal organizational channels revealed the systemic dysfunction that prevented effective challenge to Richard's decisions, even when those decisions threatened company survival. The organizational structure Richard had established deliberately eliminated formal mechanisms for strategic review or collaborative decision-making that might constrain his authority or subject his judgment to analytical scrutiny from more competent team members. Sarah Chen possessed the strategic marketing expertise necessary to develop effective solutions for Henderson Group's challenges, but Richard had structured project responsibilities to exclude her from client relationship management and strategic planning discussions. Her innovative campaign concepts and analytical capabilities were relegated to implementation support that followed his directives rather than contributing to strategic development that required independent thinking and creative problem-solving. Marcus Webb had conducted comprehensive competitive analysis that identified specific market positioning opportunities that could address Henderson Group's concerns while differentiating their services from emerging competitors. His research provided actionable recommendations that could restore campaign effectiveness and strengthen long-term relationship satisfaction. However, Richard's project assignment approach prevented Marcus from accessing client feedback directly or participating in strategic planning sessions where his insights would be most valuable. David Park had identified budget allocation inefficiencies and performance measurement gaps that explained declining campaign effectiveness, while providing clear pathways for optimization that would improve return on investment and demonstrate measurable progress toward client objectives. His financial analysis revealed that campaign underperformance resulted from resource misallocation and inadequate success metrics rather than fundamental strategic flaws that required complete approach revision. Jennifer Kim maintained the strongest relationship with Henderson Group executives and possessed detailed understanding of their organizational culture, decision-making processes, and strategic priorities that influenced their evaluation of campaign effectiveness. Her diplomatic skills and cultural sensitivity provided essential foundations for relationship repair and long-term partnership development that required trust-building and commitment demonstration beyond simple performance improvement. The collective expertise within our team exceeded the analytical and strategic capabilities necessary to resolve Henderson Group's concerns, while strengthening our overall client relationship and market position. However, Richard's authoritarian management structure prevented effective collaboration and strategic coordination that would have transformed the crisis into an opportunity for demonstrating superior service quality and professional competence. My recognition of this organizational dysfunction coincided with a broader understanding of the futility of attempting to reform Richard's behavior through patient endurance, documented feedback, or appeals to professional standards and business logic. 18 months of systematic documentation had revealed patterns of misconduct that were consistent, deliberate, and resistant to modification through conventional management development or performance improvement processes. Richard's psychological need for dominance and control over subordinates outweighed his commitment to business success and professional effectiveness. His decision-making consistently prioritized maintaining authority over achieving optimal outcomes for clients, employees, or company performance. The pattern indicated personality traits and behavioral preferences that were fundamentally incompatible with collaborative leadership and strategic competence required for sustainable business success. The documentation had also revealed that Richard's behavior was escalating rather than improving, despite repeated evidence of its negative impact on employee morale, client satisfaction, and business performance. His abuse had become more frequent and more severe over time, suggesting psychological dynamics that fed on employee submission rather than responding to feedback or consequences. The progression indicated that continued patience and documentation would result in further deterioration rather than eventual improvement. The turning point occurred when I realized that protecting Henderson Group required bypassing Richard's authority entirely and implementing crisis management strategies that contradicted his explicit instructions while risking immediate termination for insubordination. The choice represented a fundamental shift from documenting abuse to actively resisting it through direct challenge to his decision-making authority and strategic competence. The risk analysis was sobering but clarifying. Allowing Richard to proceed with his planned presentation would guarantee Henderson Group's contract termination and damage our professional reputation throughout the industry. The resulting business impact would affect every employee through reduced revenue, potential layoffs, and limited career advancement opportunities within a declining organization. My compliance with Richard's flawed strategy would preserve my employment temporarily while contributing to collective professional harm that extended far beyond my individual circumstances. Alternatively, developing and implementing effective solutions for Henderson Group's concerns without Richard's authorization would demonstrate superior strategic thinking and client relationship management while preserving essential business relationships and protecting colleague employment security. The approach required accepting personal risk of termination, while prioritizing collective benefit and professional integrity over individual security and hierarchical compliance. The decision crystallized when I recognized that my real estate investment success had fundamentally altered the risk-reward calculation for challenging Richard's authority. Rodriguez Commercial Properties now generated sufficient income to support my lifestyle independently of employment compensation, transforming potential termination from economic catastrophe to temporary inconvenience that would accelerate my transition to full-time real estate investment and property management. More significantly, my position as Richard's landlord provided ultimate leverage over his business operations while maintaining complete confidentiality about the power shift that had occurred in our professional relationship. Any retaliation he attempted through termination or professional sabotage could be countered through lease enforcement or property management decisions, that would threaten his business location and operational stability. The psychological liberation that accompanied this recognition was immediate and profound. For 21 months, I had endured systematic abuse while building resources and documenting evidence, because I believed patience and preparation were necessary for eventual justice and organizational reform. The realization that I possessed definitive power over Richard's business operations while maintaining strategic surprise transformed my approach from defensive preparation to offensive capability development. The Henderson Group crisis became the perfect vehicle for demonstrating superior competence, while exposing Richard's strategic failures in ways that would be immediately apparent to external observers and internal stakeholders. Rather than documenting his incompetence privately, I could contrast it publicly with effective problem-solving that preserved essential client relationships and protected company performance. The strategy required careful coordination with team members who possessed complementary expertise necessary for comprehensive crisis resolution, while maintaining confidentiality about my building ownership and financial independence that enabled risk-taking unavailable to employees dependent on traditional employment security. Sarah, Marcus, David, and Jennifer needed to understand their critical roles in solution development without knowing the broader context that allowed me to challenge Richard's authority directly. My approach began with private conversations that assessed each colleague's willingness to participate in unauthorized strategic planning that contradicted Richard's explicit project assignments and organizational hierarchy. The discussions required delicate balance between building collaborative commitment and maintaining operational security that protected everyone from retaliation until our comprehensive solution could be presented as accomplished fact rather than proposed alternative. Sarah's response revealed the extent to which Richard's abuse had demoralized talented employees while suppressing their professional capabilities and career development opportunities. Her immediate enthusiasm for strategic collaboration demonstrated both her analytical competence and her frustration with management constraints that prevented effective contribution to client success and business performance. Marcus provided comprehensive competitive analysis and market positioning recommendations that addressed Henderson Group's specific concerns, while identifying opportunities for service expansion and relationship strengthening that could generate additional revenue streams and long-term partnership development. His research capabilities had been systematically underutilized through Richard's project assignment approach that relegated analytical talent to routine implementation rather than strategic planning. David's financial analysis revealed optimization opportunities that could improve campaign performance while demonstrating measurable return on investment improvements that would satisfy Henderson Group's accountability requirements and provide frameworks for ongoing performance evaluation and strategic adjustment. His expertise in budget allocation and performance measurement provided essential foundations for sustainable solution implementation. Jennifer's relationship management insights and diplomatic communication strategies provided frameworks for presenting solutions to Henderson Group executives in ways that would rebuild confidence while maintaining positive partnership dynamics throughout the transition period. Her understanding of client organizational culture and decision-making processes enabled strategic positioning that would maximize receptivity to our recommended approaches. The collaborative planning process revealed the exceptional collective capabilities that existed within our team, despite Richard's systematic efforts to prevent coordination and strategic integration. Working together without his interference, we developed comprehensive solutions that addressed every aspect of Henderson Group's concerns, while positioning them for enhanced market success and competitive advantage. The solution development also demonstrated the professional satisfaction and creative energy that emerged when competent employees were empowered to contribute their expertise toward challenging problems that required innovative thinking and collaborative problem-solving. The contrast with normal workplace dynamics under Richard's authoritarian management was striking and energizing for everyone involved. However, implementing our solutions required direct challenge to Richard's authority that would force immediate confrontation about leadership competence, strategic decision-making, and organizational power structures. The presentation to Henderson Group would reveal whether our collaborative approach could preserve essential client relationships while exposing Richard's incompetence to external observers whose judgment would influence his professional reputation and business viability. The preparation phase concluded with my recognition that Henderson Group represented the optimal opportunity for demonstrating alternative leadership approaches while building evidence for comprehensive organizational reform that addressed systematic workplace dysfunction rather than isolated incidents of management failure. The crisis had evolved from business challenge to change catalyst that would determine whether Blackwood Marketing Solutions could evolve beyond Richard's toxic influence or would continue declining until external pressures forced closure or acquisition. My decision to proceed with unauthorized crisis resolution marked the definitive end of my strategy of patient endurance and systematic documentation. The breaking point had been reached where continued compliance with Richard's dysfunctional authority would contribute to collective harm that extended beyond individual career concerns to encompass client relationships, colleague welfare, and organizational survival. The woman Richard considered a subordinate employee was about to demonstrate strategic leadership that would preserve the business relationships he was systematically destroying, while exposing the fundamental incompetence that his authoritarian management style had been designed to conceal. The confrontation would determine whether competence and collaboration could overcome hierarchical abuse and strategic negligence in ways that benefited all stakeholders, rather than protecting individual authority at collective expense. The transformation from individual resistance to collective action required careful orchestration of conversations that would build strategic partnerships without alerting Richard to the collaborative planning that was developing beneath his notice. Each potential ally needed to understand their essential role in addressing the Henderson Group crisis, while maintaining operational security that protected everyone from retaliation until our comprehensive solution could be presented as accomplished fact rather than theoretical proposal. Sarah Chen represented the most critical alliance because her strategic marketing expertise provided the foundation for campaign revision that could address Henderson Group's specific concerns while demonstrating innovative approaches that would strengthen long-term relationship satisfaction. However, approaching Sarah required delicate balance between building collaborative commitment and maintaining confidentiality about my broader strategic objectives and hidden resources that enabled risk-taking unavailable to traditional employees. The conversation with Sarah began during a routine client coordination meeting where we could discuss Henderson Group's concerns without arousing Richard's suspicion about unauthorized strategic planning. Her immediate recognition of the campaign performance gaps and potential solutions revealed both her analytical competence and her frustration with management constraints that prevented effective contribution to client success and business performance improvement. Sarah's response to my indirect inquiry about alternative strategic approaches demonstrated her understanding of the crisis severity, while revealing her willingness to participate in solution development that contradicted Richard's explicit instructions about project hierarchy and decision-making authority. Her commitment emerged not from personal ambition but from professional integrity that prioritized client welfare and company reputation over hierarchical compliance and individual security. The alliance with Sarah established the creative foundation necessary for comprehensive campaign revision, while providing strategic cover for additional conversations with team members whose complementary expertise would be essential for effective crisis resolution. Her participation legitimized collaborative planning as necessary client service rather than organizational insubordination, creating frameworks for building broader coalitions without triggering Richard's awareness of coordinated resistance to his authority. Marcus Webb presented different alliance challenges because his analytical capabilities were simultaneously essential for solution development and potentially threatening to Richard's control over strategic information and competitive intelligence. His research expertise had been systematically marginalized through project assignments that relegated his insights to background support rather than strategic planning contributions, creating professional frustration that could motivate collaboration while generating caution about additional risks to his employment security. The approach to Marcus required demonstrating immediate practical applications for his analytical capabilities, while addressing his concerns about challenging Richard's authority through unauthorized strategic coordination. His research had already identified market positioning opportunities that could resolve Henderson Group's concerns, but translating those insights into actionable recommendations required collaborative planning that extended beyond his official project responsibilities and organizational hierarchy. Marcus's commitment to the alliance developed through recognition that his analytical work could achieve meaningful impact on client outcomes, rather than remaining buried in reports that Richard ignored or misrepresented during strategic presentations. His participation represented investment in professional satisfaction and career development that transcended immediate employment security concerns while contributing essential competitive analysis that strengthened our comprehensive solution development. The collaboration with Marcus revealed the extent to which Richard's management approach had systematically wasted intellectual resources and analytical capabilities that could have strengthened company performance and competitive positioning throughout our target market. His research quality exceeded industry standards while providing actionable insights that could guide strategic planning and business development initiatives across multiple client relationships and service categories. David Park's alliance required addressing his concerns about financial compliance and regulatory adherence that could be compromised through strategic planning that bypassed normal organizational approval processes and budget authorization procedures. His expertise in performance measurement and resource allocation was essential for demonstrating measurable improvements to Henderson Group, while ensuring solution implementation remained within operational constraints and professional standards. The conversation with David focused on his recognition that Henderson Group's concerns reflected resource misallocation and performance measurement gaps, rather than fundamental strategic failures that required complete campaign revision. His financial analysis provided objective evidence that current campaign underperformance resulted from management decisions rather than employee incompetence or market conditions beyond our control and influence. David's participation in the alliance emerged from his understanding that effective crisis resolution required accurate financial analysis and strategic resource allocation that Richard's approach ignored, while focusing on defensive arguments that would alienate clients and damage professional relationships. His commitment represented investment in analytical integrity and business ethics rather than personal advancement or organizational politics. The collaboration with David established essential credibility for solution implementation while providing frameworks for measuring performance improvements and demonstrating accountability that would satisfy Henderson Group's concerns about return on investment and strategic effectiveness. His financial expertise transformed theoretical strategic planning into actionable recommendations with measurable outcomes and clear implementation timelines. Jennifer Kim represented the most delicate alliance negotiation because her diplomatic skills and client relationship expertise made her simultaneously indispensable for crisis resolution and potentially vulnerable to Richard's retaliation if our collaborative planning became known before solution presentation. Her understanding of Henderson Group's organizational culture and decision-making processes provided essential foundations for strategic positioning and communication approaches that would maximize solution receptivity. The alliance with Jennifer required acknowledging the personal risks she faced through participation in unauthorized strategic coordination, while demonstrating that effective crisis resolution depended on her relationship management capabilities and cultural sensitivity. Her involvement could not be compelled through logical arguments about business necessity because the stakes included professional reputation and employment security that extended beyond immediate project outcomes. Jennifer's commitment to collaboration developed through her recognition that Henderson Group's satisfaction required strategic approaches that contradicted Richard's planned defensive presentation, while building on relationship foundations that she had developed through consistent professional excellence and diplomatic communication. Her participation represented dedication to client service and professional integrity, rather than organizational rebellion or personal ambition. The alliance with Jennifer provided essential frameworks for presenting solutions to Henderson Group executives in ways that would rebuild confidence while maintaining positive partnership dynamics throughout the transition period. Her insights about client expectations and communication preferences enabled strategic positioning that would demonstrate competence while avoiding confrontational approaches that could damage relationships despite solution effectiveness. The collaborative planning process that emerged from these individual alliances revealed the exceptional collective capabilities that existed within our team despite Richard's systematic efforts to prevent coordination and strategic integration. Working together without his interference, we developed comprehensive solutions that addressed every aspect of Henderson Group's concerns while positioning them for enhanced market success and competitive advantage that exceeded their original objectives. The solution development demonstrated the professional satisfaction and creative energy that emerged when competent employees were empowered to contribute their expertise toward challenging problems that required innovative thinking and collaborative problem-solving approaches. The contrast with normal workplace dynamics under Richard's authoritarian management was striking and energizing for everyone involved in the strategic coordination process. Sarah's campaign revision incorporated Marcus's competitive analysis to identify market positioning opportunities that addressed Henderson Group's specific concerns while differentiating their services from emerging competitors who had been gaining market share through innovative approaches and superior client engagement strategies. The integrated approach combined creative concept development with analytical market intelligence that provided strategic advantages unavailable through separate departmental planning processes. Marcus's research revealed that Henderson Group's performance challenges reflected industry-wide shifts in customer engagement patterns and competitive positioning that required adaptive strategies rather than defensive approaches that ignored market evolution and customer preference changes. His analysis provided actionable recommendations for campaign optimization that could restore effectiveness while positioning Henderson Group for sustained competitive advantage. David's financial analysis identified budget reallocation opportunities that could improve campaign performance while demonstrating measurable return on investment improvements that would satisfy Henderson Group's accountability requirements and provide frameworks for ongoing performance evaluation and strategic adjustment. His optimization recommendations addressed resource utilization inefficiencies that had contributed to declining campaign effectiveness. Jennifer's relationship management strategy provided frameworks for presenting solutions to Henderson Group executives that would rebuild confidence while maintaining partnership dynamics that supported long-term collaboration and mutual success. Her approach acknowledged their concerns while positioning our recommendations as proactive client service rather than reactive crisis management that admitted previous strategic failures. The comprehensive solution that emerged from collaborative planning addressed Henderson Group's immediate concerns while establishing foundations for enhanced partnership satisfaction and strategic alignment that could generate additional service opportunities and client referrals throughout their industry network. The approach demonstrated strategic thinking and client commitment that exceeded their expectations while showcasing capabilities that differentiated our services from competitor offerings. However, implementing the solution required direct challenge to Richard's authority that would force immediate confrontation about leadership competence, strategic decision-making processes, and organizational power structures that governed client relationship management and strategic planning responsibilities. The presentation to Henderson Group would reveal whether collaborative excellence could preserve essential business relationships while exposing management incompetence to external observers. The alliance coordination required establishing communication protocols and strategic timing that would enable effective collaboration while maintaining operational security until our solution could be presented to Henderson Group as comprehensive alternative to Richard's planned defensive approach. The preparation needed to address potential retaliation scenarios while protecting individual alliance members from professional consequences that could result from challenging organizational hierarchy. My role in alliance coordination was complicated by the necessity of maintaining secrecy about my building ownership and financial independence that fundamentally altered my risk tolerance and strategic options compared to colleagues who depended on traditional employment security for economic survival and career advancement. The power differential required careful management to ensure collaborative decision-making rather than unconscious manipulation of colleagues who lacked comparable resources and leverage. The alliance-building process revealed the systematic isolation that Richard's management approach had created among team members who possessed complementary expertise but had been prevented from collaborative strategic planning through project assignment structures and communication protocols that maintained his central authority over all client relationship decisions and strategic coordination activities. Breaking through this systematic isolation required demonstrating that collaborative strategic planning could achieve superior outcomes for clients, employees, and company performance, while providing professional satisfaction and career development opportunities that were impossible under Richard's authoritarian management structure and centralized decision-making approaches. The collective commitment that emerged from individual alliance negotiations represented transformation from defensive endurance of workplace toxicity to proactive engagement in professional excellence that prioritized client success and organizational effectiveness over hierarchical compliance and individual security concerns. The shift from individual survival strategies to collaborative solution development created energy and optimism that had been suppressed through systematic management dysfunction. The final alliance coordination session established implementation timelines and strategic responsibilities that would enable comprehensive crisis resolution while building evidence for organizational reform that addressed systematic workplace problems rather than isolated incidents of management failure or individual performance gaps. The Henderson Group presentation would serve as demonstration of alternative leadership approaches that prioritized competence and collaboration over authority and control. The alliances that had formed around Henderson Group crisis resolution provided foundations for broader organizational change that could transform Blackwood Marketing Solutions from toxic workplace environment to genuinely professional organization that supported employee development while delivering exceptional client service and sustainable business performance. The collaboration demonstrated possibilities for positive change that extended far beyond immediate crisis management to encompass systematic cultural reform and strategic excellence. The systematic intelligence gathering operation that emerged from our strategic alliance required sophisticated coordination and information security protocols that would protect individual contributors while building comprehensive evidence of Richard's misconduct across multiple operational areas. Each alliance member possessed access to different aspects of company operations, client relationships, and management decisions that collectively revealed patterns of systematic dysfunction that extended far beyond isolated incidents of workplace toxicity. The intelligence coordination established secure communication channels and documentation procedures that enabled evidence sharing without creating electronic records that could be discovered through routine system monitoring or administrative oversight. The approach required careful balance between thorough documentation and operational security that protected alliance members from retaliation, while building irrefutable evidence of management failures that violated professional standards and business ethics. Sarah's intelligence contributions focused on strategic planning failures and client communication practices that revealed Richard's systematic misrepresentation of employee contributions and campaign effectiveness. Her access to creative development processes and client feedback provided detailed documentation of the disconnect between Richard's public presentations about strategic leadership and actual project outcomes that resulted from employee expertise he consistently minimized or appropriated. The creative brief analysis that Sarah conducted revealed systematic patterns where Richard's strategic direction contradicted market research and client objectives, while employee recommendations that addressed actual business needs were dismissed as insufficiently sophisticated or potentially disruptive to established client relationships. The documentation demonstrated that campaign failures resulted from management decisions that ignored professional expertise rather than employee incompetence or market conditions beyond company control. Sarah's client communication records provided compelling evidence of Richard's practice of taking credit for innovative solutions, while simultaneously undermining the employees who had developed those approaches through private communications that suggested their contributions were minimal or problematic. The contrast between public attribution and private criticism revealed deliberate psychological manipulation designed to maintain employee dependence while appropriating their professional achievements. The documentation process revealed that Richard's communication practices created systematic confusion about individual contributions and strategic responsibility that prevented clients from understanding actual performance dynamics while protecting him from accountability for strategic failures that damaged client relationships and campaign effectiveness. The pattern explained declining client satisfaction and contract renewals that threatened company financial stability despite superior employee performance. Marcus's intelligence gathering focused on competitive analysis and market positioning failures that demonstrated Richard's strategic incompetence, while revealing missed opportunities that resulted from his refusal to implement employee recommendations based on comprehensive market research and industry trend analysis. His access to financial performance data and competitive intelligence provided objective evidence of business impact that resulted from management decisions rather than external market conditions. The competitive analysis documentation revealed that Richard consistently ignored market research that identified strategic opportunities while pursuing approaches that had been proven ineffective by competitors who had abandoned similar strategies after experiencing measurable failures. His decision-making reflected personal preferences and theoretical assumptions rather than data-driven analysis that considered market evidence and client feedback patterns. Marcus's research had identified specific market positioning opportunities that could address multiple client concerns while strengthening competitive advantages through innovative service offerings and strategic partnerships that Richard dismissed as unnecessarily complex or potentially disruptive to existing business relationships. The missed opportunities represented significant revenue potential and market share growth that remained unrealized due to management resistance to strategic innovation. The financial impact analysis that Marcus conducted demonstrated measurable business consequences that resulted from Richard's strategic failures, while revealing the potential performance improvements that could be achieved through competent leadership and employee empowerment. The documentation provided objective evidence that connected management practices to business outcomes in ways that eliminated subjective interpretation about causation and accountability. David's intelligence contributions focused on financial management practices and resource allocation decisions that revealed systematic misallocation of company resources, while demonstrating the business impact of Richard's discriminatory treatment of employee contributions and professional development opportunities. His access to budget planning and performance measurement systems provided detailed documentation of the economic consequences of toxic management practices. The budget analysis that David conducted revealed systematic patterns where resources were allocated to projects and initiatives that supported Richard's preferred approaches despite evidence of their ineffectiveness, while employee recommendations that could improve performance and reduce costs were rejected without adequate consideration or analytical review. The pattern demonstrated prioritization of management ego over business optimization and financial responsibility. David's financial documentation revealed that employee productivity and client satisfaction metrics exceeded industry benchmarks despite receiving below-average resource allocation and strategic support, indicating that company performance could improve significantly under different leadership approaches that recognized and developed employee capabilities, rather than systematically suppressing them through discriminatory management practices. The performance measurement analysis that David provided demonstrated systematic bias in evaluation criteria that favored approaches that enhanced Richard's authority, while penalizing employee initiative and strategic thinking that threatened his control over decision-making processes. The documentation revealed that promotion decisions and compensation adjustments reflected political considerations rather than objective performance assessment based on measurable business contributions. Jennifer's intelligence gathering focused on client relationship dynamics and communication practices that revealed the systematic damage that Richard's management approach created for business development and long-term partnership satisfaction. Her direct client interactions provided detailed documentation of the disconnect between client expectations and management priorities that threatened essential business relationships. The client feedback documentation that Jennifer compiled revealed systematic patterns where clients expressed appreciation for employee expertise and service quality, while questioning strategic direction and communication approaches that reflected Richard's involvement in relationship management. The pattern indicated that client satisfaction depended on employee competence, despite management practices that undermined that competence through systematic criticism and authority limitations. Jennifer's relationship analysis demonstrated that client retention and contract expansion opportunities were being systematically damaged through Richard's communication style and strategic decision-making that ignored client feedback and market conditions, while prioritizing internal authority maintenance over client service excellence and business partnership development. The documentation revealed that multiple clients had expressed concerns about strategic direction and communication effectiveness that reflected Richard's involvement in relationship management, while praising employee contributions and expressing interest in expanded service relationships that would utilize employee expertise more extensively without management interference that constrained creative problem-solving and strategic innovation. The collective intelligence that emerged from coordinated documentation efforts revealed systematic patterns of misconduct that extended across all operational areas, while demonstrating measurable business impact that threatened company survival and employee career opportunities. The evidence provided comprehensive foundation for organizational reform that addressed systematic problems rather than isolated incidents of management failure. The coordination of intelligence gathering required sophisticated information security protocols that protected individual contributors, while enabling comprehensive analysis that revealed connections between different operational areas and decision-making processes. The approach required careful balance between thorough documentation and personal safety that protected alliance members from retaliation while building evidence necessary for effective organizational change. The secure communication protocols that we established utilized encrypted messaging systems and private meeting locations that enabled information sharing without creating electronic records that could be discovered through routine system monitoring or administrative investigation. The security measures protected individual contributors while enabling collaborative analysis that revealed patterns and connections that would not have been apparent through isolated observation. The documentation standardization procedures that we implemented ensured consistent evidence quality and analytical compatibility while maintaining individual contributor anonymity and operational security. The approach enabled comprehensive analysis that revealed systematic patterns while protecting personal information and individual contribution details that could enable retaliation identification and targeted harassment. The evidence compilation process revealed the scope and systematic nature of Richard's misconduct, while demonstrating its measurable impact on business performance, client relationships, and employee well-being. The comprehensive documentation provided foundation for organizational accountability that addressed root causes rather than surface symptoms of workplace dysfunction and strategic incompetence. The analysis of collected intelligence revealed systematic patterns that connected individual incidents of abuse and discrimination to broader organizational failures that threatened business sustainability and professional standards. The evidence demonstrated that Richard's management approach was systematically destroying company assets through employee demoralization, client relationship damage, and strategic failure that prevented optimal business performance. The competitive disadvantage analysis that emerged from intelligence coordination revealed that Richard's management practices had created systematic operational inefficiencies that handicapped company performance against competitors, who effectively utilized employee expertise and maintained positive workplace cultures that supported innovation and client service excellence. The client vulnerability assessment that resulted from intelligence analysis demonstrated that multiple essential business relationships were at risk due to management practices that ignored client feedback, while suppressing employee expertise that could address client concerns and strengthen partnership satisfaction. The pattern indicated that business development opportunities were being systematically missed through management incompetence and authority obsession. The employee retention analysis revealed systematic patterns of talent departure and recruitment difficulties that resulted from Richard's reputation within the professional community for creating toxic workplace environments that suppressed professional development while providing inadequate recognition and advancement opportunities for competent employees seeking career growth and skill development. The financial stability assessment that emerged from intelligence compilation demonstrated that company performance was declining despite superior employee capabilities and strong client relationships because management practices prevented optimal resource utilization and strategic positioning that could capitalize on market opportunities and competitive advantages. The comprehensive intelligence analysis provided detailed foundation for organizational reform that addressed systematic problems through leadership accountability and structural changes that would support employee empowerment and business excellence, rather than authoritarian control and strategic mediocrity that threatened long-term viability and professional reputation. The evidence compilation established clear connections between management practices and business outcomes, while demonstrating the potential performance improvements that could be achieved through competent leadership that recognized and developed employee capabilities, rather than systematically suppressing them through discriminatory treatment and authority protection that prioritized individual ego over collective success. The intelligence gathering operation had transformed individual observations of workplace toxicity into comprehensive analysis of organizational dysfunction that revealed systematic patterns of misconduct, while providing detailed foundation for positive change that could benefit all stakeholders through improved business performance, enhanced client satisfaction, and professional workplace culture that supported employee development and career advancement. The collaborative intelligence coordination demonstrated the exceptional analytical capabilities and professional commitment that existed within the organization, despite management practices that systematically suppressed those capabilities, while creating artificial limitations on performance and strategic positioning that prevented optimal business outcomes and competitive advantage development. The comprehensive evidence that our intelligence gathering operation had produced required sophisticated presentation and strategic implementation capabilities that extended beyond our existing professional expertise, Transforming documentation into effective organizational change demanded advanced skills in negotiation, crisis communication, legal compliance, and strategic planning that would enable us to challenge Richard's authority while implementing sustainable reforms that protected all stakeholders. The skill development process began with my recognition that successful confrontation required capabilities that transcended normal workplace interactions. The complexity of documenting systematic misconduct while maintaining legal protections and professional standards demanded expertise in employment law, organizational psychology, and strategic communication that extended beyond traditional marketing and business administration knowledge. My real estate investment experience had provided foundational understanding of legal compliance and regulatory adherence that translated directly to employment standards and workplace conduct requirements. Property management had taught me systematic approaches to documentation, evidence preservation, and dispute resolution that applied effectively to employment relationships and organizational accountability. The analytical frameworks I had developed for evaluating commercial investments provided structured approaches to assessing workplace dynamics and implementing strategic changes. However, the specific challenges of confronting workplace abuse while implementing comprehensive organizational reform required specialized knowledge about employment law, discrimination protection, and retaliation prevention that exceeded my existing expertise. The learning process involved extensive research into legal frameworks and regulatory standards that governed workplace conduct while providing protection for employees who challenged management misconduct through legitimate accountability mechanisms. The legal research revealed sophisticated understanding of documentation requirements and evidence standards that would protect our alliance members while building irrefutable cases for systematic misconduct. Employment law provided specific frameworks for distinguishing between legitimate management authority and discriminatory abuse, while establishing clear standards for professional conduct and organizational accountability that applied regardless of hierarchical position. The employment discrimination statutes provided detailed protection for employees who documented workplace abuse while participating in legitimate efforts to address systematic misconduct through internal accountability or external regulatory intervention. The legal frameworks established clear protections against retaliation while providing structured approaches to evidence collection and presentation that would maximize effectiveness while maintaining legal compliance. The documentation standards that emerged from legal research provided sophisticated frameworks for evidence collection that would satisfy regulatory requirements while protecting individual contributors from retaliation or professional harm. The approaches ensured that our evidence would meet legal standards for demonstrating systematic patterns of misconduct while providing comprehensive foundation for organizational reform. Sarah's skill development focused on strategic communication and presentation techniques that would enable effective client relationship management during periods of organizational transition and leadership accountability. Her creative expertise provided excellent foundation for developing communication strategies, but addressing crisis situations while maintaining client confidence required advanced diplomatic skills and relationship management capabilities. The communication training that Sarah pursued involved specialized coursework in crisis management and stakeholder communication that provided frameworks for maintaining client relationships during periods of organizational change while ensuring transparency and professional accountability. The training emphasized strategic messaging that acknowledged problems while demonstrating commitment to positive resolution and enhanced service quality. Sarah's development of presentation skills enabled her to communicate complex strategic concepts to diverse audiences while maintaining clarity and professional credibility. The capabilities she developed transformed her from talented creative professional to strategic communicator, capable of representing organizational interests during challenging circumstances while maintaining ethical standards and client satisfaction. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.